Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We're joined today by Travis Fox, Athletic Director at Aptos High School on the Central Coast of California. Coach, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, Justin, thanks for having me on, man.
All right, well, let's get into it. Take us through your background as a coach in athletics. How did you end up in the space? How did you end up becoming the athletic director? Take us through the journey of post-high school, in high school, to college, to now. Where are we at? How did we get here?
Sure. So grew up, I come from a family of athletes, my cousins, my brothers, my pops, we've all been coaches. I saw the writing on the wall early in my senior year in high school that coaching was probably my route. And my freshman year in college, I volunteered at a local high school down the street, and that took off. I started with football and hoops. I'm a hoops guy, and then worked my way through about 4 years of school there. And going into my senior year, a business school, principal at the school I was working at called me in and he said, "Hey, Fox, I got a history teaching job open for you." And I said, "Oh, Ryan, I'm in business school, man. You got me wrong." He goes, "Oh no, I know." And he basically had the whole package to get my credentials done and start my student teaching. And he said, "Hey, I think you need to be here." And I went to my boss. I was working an HR gig, intern, and I told her what he said. And the next morning she called me in. She goes, "I think I'm going to fire you if you don't take that job." And so I started teaching right there at that school where I had been working. So I taught and coached out there for about 8 years.
Wait, press pause, because I
was,
want to know two things. One,
Yep.
Where did you grow up? Two, where did you go to college that put you near this phantom school we're talking about? Three, what's the school you were actually at?
Yeah, right on. Yeah. So I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Went to Palmer High School. Actually played with Reggie Jackson, who's a point guard on the Nuggets right now. My brothers played hoops there, and then I went to college at Colorado Mesa. Played hoops and football, and had a pretty severe football injury, which kind of led to either writing on the wall that coaching was probably my route. And then went to Colorado Mesa University and started coaching at Grand Valley High School, right down the road there in Western Colorado. Yeah, they were great. I coached a little football there, hoops. We had a good run of hoops, and then got in teaching there, and that was that. And my wife's actually from the Aptos area. I know I'm jumping ahead, but after I'd worked there, this AD job opened up, and she wanted to come home, start a family, and I threw my name in the hat, and here we are 5 years later. I'm in year 5 at Aptos.
Nice. Well, we can talk offline about the difference between living in Western Colorado and coastal California, because I don't think our listeners need to be regaled over
No doubt.
that difference. But let's dive into this. So,
hey, I'll say this though: kids are kids everywhere, man. Kids are kids, and that was kind of the easy transition for me. Was kids are kids.
No doubt, they always are. And as they get older, right? People get exposed to more things. They figure out their path, and at the end of the day, we're just trying to keep them at the center of the equation, which
Exactly.
is a big part of what you do, and I'm aware of that. So, talk a little bit about when you were volunteering, you were helping. Then the principal kind of presented you with a job. You came in. At what point were you the head coach? Not sure if you were assisting or whatever. But I want to know, I always ask, like, what did you realize right away that you needed to figure out when you became the head coach, right? When you slid over and became the decision maker versus the recommending body. No matter how much you think you figured it out, we're never ready for that. Do you remember a few of those things that kind of caught you by surprise that you had to work through and navigate?
Yeah, so I was the offensive coordinator for varsity football team, and then worked on varsity hoops after about year 5. Yeah, the administration part was kind of the big piece, right? Because as a coach who grew up around the game, grew up around hoops, studied hoops, right, could draw up any inbound play whenever you needed it. However, the admin stuff, right, that was kind of a brand new frontier for me. From the paperwork to the big cultural pieces, physical paperwork, all that stuff. And that was something that as an assistant, you never even think about, right? You just show up at the gym, before practice, get the practice plan and hoop it up. And the administration part was kind of the big eye opener, right? Taking the next step.
And if you could, were there things that you figured out early that caught you by surprise that then you were able to kind of hack and turn into a sustainable part of the program that you can offer to others that are listening? Just like, hey, I wasn't aware that you had to, figure out transportation. And, I wasn't aware that you
Right.
figure out meals for your kids or whatever it was. And over the course of those 8 years, I was able to do this in a way that now it's even bled into my role as the AD.
Yeah, no, I was lucky out there. Different than different than the AD here at Aptos. Uh, Basically, transportation was all taken care of. Right, there was a lot of things that made it successful for me to kind of step in and go. Um, Managing the other coaches on staff was kind of a big piece. Right, you're a younger guy, and trying to manage the other adults in your program as well. That was a bigger challenge, but being vulnerable, right? I think being vulnerable in those first few years was huge. I didn't come in and pretend like I knew anything. I was constantly leaning on some of the veteran help, always in the AD's office, asking questions. Um, I think bench decorum, luckily that was something I figured out as a young assistant. So I was kind of ready to plug and play after that. But yeah, being vulnerable and asking for help. Like I was, ask for help because there's a lot of things that you don't know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so staying ahead of things and just asking questions. And then obviously the camaraderie amongst other coaches, right? That's part of the sport. Connecting, um, networking, right? And so that those were all get in early, go to your league meetings, be accessible, be open. We're all in the same boat.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your transition from teacher and coach to athletic administrator. And it wasn't like the local job that you had a shot at. I mean, you're putting in for a job that's a couple thousand miles away
Yeah.
and sight unseen. Talk a little bit about what that process was like, um, why you considered this one versus some others maybe that intrigued you earlier. And then once you kind of laid the groundwork on that, I got a few follow-ups about your transition to athletic director.
Yeah, so we were, me and my wife are getting ready to move out of Western Colorado. We were kind of at that point in our life looking to make a jump. Threw my name in the hat at some bigger jobs over in Denver, kind of Colorado Springs. They call it the Front Range of Colorado, and not getting many bites. And it was one of those deals where we had such a good deal set up, we didn't want to leave until you had something. And then this job opened up. She's from in her hometown here, and threw my name in the hat. Interviewed. The interview went really well, and then you start having those conversations with the wife about what the next steps are. To be honest, wasn't sure if it was going to work out, and then I got the call. And they offered the job, and we slept on it, and the next night we accepted it, and luckily I had a summer to kind of transition the family out here. But it was one of those things. It's like, hey, this is an opportunity, right? This is an option, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take it. Looking back in a few years, and it was absolutely the right move. Absolutely the right move.
Yeah, and I can totally appreciate that. And there's a couple different threads I want to pull on because one, you're going from now coach to athletic director. And so I want
Right.
to talk a little bit about what that transition was like. What were, again, the things that you realized right away you needed to figure out just in the management role, like you said earlier, managing other adults. And then there's this other thread of you're moving from everything you've known in Colorado and Colorado sports to, oh, wait, now here I'm in California. So if
Yeah.
you could tackle the first part for me, which is like, okay, what did you realize right away you had to figure out going from sport program lead to overarching
Right.
athletic
Right.
lead, and the lessons that you learned, the things that you kind of knew how to do, but again, how were you asking questions and what caught you by surprise?
Yeah, no, I think, when you look at athletic director, someone like myself, yourself, probably many of our listeners, you grew up around sports your whole life, right? So you're like, oh, I can direct athletics. I know my way in around the gym and around the stadium. But when I first came here, I was actually thinking that I might take one of the coaching jobs. We had an opening kind of around the same time the AD was opened, And in full transparency, I was kind of moving out here thinking that I'd be coaching and being an AD. And our principal, Peggy Pugh, she's awesome. She's been on CCS board manager. Shout out Peggy.
By the way, Peggy and I were administrative cohort together, so I know her well.
Yep. No, Peggy was awesome. She's one of the best bosses I've ever had. And she had a comment that still rings loud to me. She goes, Travis, it's more important to me that you succeed as the AD, and you'll have chances to be Travis, the basketball coach. And again, a naive AD. I was like, okay, whatever you want, boss. Right? I'm a company man. And about a month into my tenure here, I realized how lucky I was that was the decision making, because it's one thing when you're silo of basketball, right? And you're silo of your sport, but especially at a place like Aptos, where we offer every sport under the sun, I wouldn't have been able to give my best foot forward on either the coaching or the AD, right? Especially as a first year guy coming in with not much experience for the bigger part of things. So that was kind of the quick eye opener. It was like, okay, you're not just, you're not coaching anymore. It's everything running through your office, which was fun. Coming from Colorado to California, that one took me a little while to just learn all the new lingo and the acronyms. And for those of you who you may not know, but California is a federation, right? So we have 10 different sections that can all operate autonomously. Where Colorado, it's one association, right? So there's one state playoffs. You go to your leagues, and then you're right into the state playoffs. So a lot of just the timeline of the CCS season, of the CIF schedule. Those are little things that you pick up on. The competitive equity piece, right? That was something that took me a little bit to wrap my head around. But once you get past some of those logistics, like I mentioned earlier, kids are kids, sports are sports. I mean, Western Colorado and Santa Cruz are different on so many avenues. But when it comes to high school athletics, the parallels were eerily shocking, right? And so that was something that helped me settle in, on a bigger scale per se, or a different scale, but the parallels of the job were pretty identical. And so settle in, and you just learn it. You learn it as you go.
Okay, so you brought up the competitive equity piece, and for those that are not in California or on the Central Coast, basically many of our leagues, and definitely at the section level and even at the state level, they try to get kids playing in the right sandbox, so to speak. So you don't need the modern days of the world playing against the Stevensons of the world in regards to how you compete in the playoffs. In our league in general, the loose kind of organization is like Premier League soccer. If you win, you get promoted. If you lose, you get relegated. It's not that simple, but that's kind of the general guiding principle, that you're moving up and down over the years based on how strong your programs are, so that you're always being in a situation that's theoretically competitive. Give me your take as an outsider coming in 5 years ago, being a little bit shocked by it, but now that you've been in it for 5 years, as to the value add of it, the benefit, especially when we talk about kids, the logistical headaches for adults are what they are. But then also the things where, you think some of the old traditional model still could work.
Yeah, so really what we're talking about in many other states, it's based on enrollment, right? So you'll be in the playoffs with schools who are similar enrollment to you. And that's not always the case sport by sport out here. It's kind of a mindset shift, right? A paradigm shift in your head, like, hey, well, that school has a lot of kids, but why are we playing them? Or why are we seated up or down depending on the sport? It makes a lot of sense though, right? Like once you can get past that paradigm shift in your mind of enrollment based, it makes a lot of sense. And what I grew to, what I like about it is it is sports specific still. It's not like our entire state is competitive equity. Certain sports still have that enrollment based piece, whether it be adding an open division or whatnot. But I think for the state of California, I don't know if there's any other model that could realistically work, and be best for the kids, just because the landscape is so diverse out here. When you look at, styles of high schools, number of high schools, just in general. The number out here is the big thing, right? So I don't think there's any other model that could work, and especially in some sports, or I can see exactly why it was shifted this way.
For sure. And you think,
Football's the biggest one, but yeah,
go
but I
ahead,
thought,
Chuck.
if football was the biggest thing, but I think it's right. I think the competitive equity model more so than less is getting games right. Yeah.
No, and I agree with that. And I think also for those of you that aren't Californians or don't fully understand the landscape, is the federation that you mentioned lumps all schools in together. So privates, publics, everyone's playing under the same rule set. Whereas as a private school myself, you're a public school back east, the private schools have their own league in the boarding school world. So they can have fifth year kids. They can have things that are very different. And because we all play under the same CIF bylaws, right? They land differently depending on your school site and your structure. And ultimately that's your North Star, and you got to adapt to that. Once you figure that out, it's kind of like, all right, well, this is how the rules of the game, so to speak, in California. So here's what I'm also curious about as a coach, right? Were you to coach football? Were you to coach basketball? What would you say is the best thing that you did in your program that you would bring with you, right? So you've had 5 years where you haven't coached, but let's say all of a sudden you're back in the coaching seat. What is the thing that you would do, no matter what sport it was, that was a big part of your program that allowed you to have the largest ripple effect on the culture you were trying to create?
Sure. I think the biggest piece in my success, and I see it with some coaches around here and at Aptos right now, having a coach on campus is a huge component of this. So I was able to, earn the trust of the kids, trust of the community, recruit the hallways, right? And so having your hand on the ground level of the campus was huge. I was able to interact with, as a teacher, you got kids who aren't athletes coming in your class, and then they see you coaching on Friday night. I told everyone they could call me Coach Fox. And I had a lot of kids who didn't play sports that called me that. So I think fully ingraining yourself in your school community, not just, from 3 to 7 every night when you're here for basketball practice. That's a big piece. We could get into X's and O's as far as, small sided games, compared to walkthrough, standing around. But overall, I think so. There's that piece of ingraining yourself in the community, and then I kind of treated each season like the first week of school, right? So you, as a teacher, you talk about the first 2 weeks are the most important time of your school year, right? That's when you establish the norms. That's when you establish your processes. And same thing with hoops. Kind of start it like the first day of school, right? Team meetings, parent meetings are huge. Buying all that in at the very beginning of the season, and getting that buy-in right off the bat.
Sure. I want to go back to something you said about being on campus. Not everybody has that luxury, as you know. Sure, you have some off-campus coaches. Yep. I think your advice holds true with them as well, which is like, how are you getting ingrained in the school community? How are you showing up as the basketball coach at Friday night football games and walking the sideline with those kids? How are you showing up at the special events on campus so that they see you there? And it might not be possible for everybody, but the more points of contact that you have, greater your opportunity to enrich your program.
Yeah, 100%. And this, I think in 1993, was it like 75% of high school coaches were teachers, right? And now I think the numbers almost flipped, where it's like 25% of high school coaches are teachers. So the landscape's changed there too, but you're right. Ingrain yourself in that campus. And I mean, high school athletics is something special. It's a lot of your basketball players or your football players are going to be playing multi-sports. They got their scholarships, their clubs, and all that. So just supporting the whole student, right? And knowing that this student's not just a basketball player, the student's not just a lacrosse player or whatever it might be.
So as the AD, you're coming from another site. That's your only frame of reference, those 8 years at the same side. If I hear you correctly, you're coming in and you're being curious. What's this place like? and you're also coming in with a pocket full of tools that, hey, this worked really well. So talk a little bit about what you feel are the best things you brought with you, and what are
Sure.
some of the best things that you decided to hold on to that were carrying over from Aptos's past success and history.
Yeah, for sure. So I was lucky that the person I took over for, Mark Dorfman, he's still around. He's now the commissioner of our league. He was in this seat for 30 years, right? So basically, he retired, and I was coming in brand new. And I actually asked the principal when she called me and offered the job. I said, "Hey, by the way, this man who's retiring, is he going to be around, or am I just coming in?" She goes, "Oh no, he'd probably love to help you out a little bit." And the next day, I got a call from him. And so I kind of made the conscious effort, like, hey, I'm coming in here brand new. This school's got things rolling. I've been doing things a certain way for years. Let's not change what's not broke, right? So I kind of came in, and luckily we had a great framework of coaches here. I mean, we're very lucky with the people we have on staff. And so that first year, I just tried to keep things status quo and support, right? How can I support? How can I support? Luckily, I didn't have to hire any coaches that first year, so that made things pretty easy to kind of come in. Um, and on that same note, the pandemic happened about 7 months into my tenure as AD. So as soon as I figured out what direction the beach was, um, the world stopped turning there for a little bit. So then we almost had to hit reset again of everything that I knew or thought. Um, but bringing in was just a kind of management by walking around. Like, I want to be present. I want to be seen. You're going to see me at the games. You're going to see me at practices. I try and consider myself in this AD role as an assistant on every team, right? I want every coach to be able to come to me and ask for support, every kid to high five me as I'm walking around. And so I found some success just keeping that model, right? Being present, being engaged on campus. Don't just be in your office. At break, I'll just go outside and start throwing a ball at kids, or with kids, excuse me. Playing catch and just being out there. And so that was something that definitely helped assimilating myself on this campus, this culture, and then just continuing that, being present and showing authenticity when you are engaging with the kids.
So you mentioned that COVID was your first year, right? So we all kind of had that year, at least in California, where March 14th, I believe it was,
Yep.
we shut down.
Yep.
And then you came back. We didn't come back till the next April. I don't know when y'all got back in person, but you had to rebuild. So what are some of the things that sustained throughout that you've kind of held on to as kind of the beacons of who we are as Aptos Mariners? And what are some of the things that used to exist but no longer exist just because it's not
Sure.
logical anymore?
Sure. There's a lot of things that have changed, obviously, right? There's a long list of things that once were that may not be. What I told our coaches coming out of that pandemic, after that, I think once we were back in person, we had a big fall meeting, and I let them know. I said, "Hey, look, your legacy is this last year and a half, 2 years, whatever it was. It was hard. It was hard. And just by you all showing up and doing jumping jacks 10 feet apart from each other had a tremendous impact on these kids, right? And so just being there for them. Yeah, and as far as things that have changed, it was a good reset process for us. A lot of things got tightened up, right? A lot of things got tightened up. And then, in full transparency, that first year when we were live and kind of fully back, it was definitely a whole new learning curve again, right? You're kind of, things have reset themselves. The way that was is not anymore. And so as an entire site, we kind of had to reset our system. I think as an entire probably world, right? We had to reset a lot of what we were doing. But all the staple things we had done before, right? Kind of they lasted through the pandemic and kept it going right when we were back. Logistically, from like a football standpoint, having those 3 days over that summer, it was odd practices, right? There was distancing involved and health checks and all that. But our football program, they found a lot of success only doing three quick days over the summer. So they copied that model, right? So now they're 3 days over the summer, short and sweet. Yeah, so there was a lot of things that there were some silver linings in the pandemic for sure, but I think just perseverance from the adults that played a tremendous impact on the kids.
Let me ask this question. You followed Coach Dorfman, who was there 30 plus years. And, and I followed an AD who was my AD, who was here for 36 years. And then we had somebody in between for a couple of years as well. But it's like, when you're following that track record, how do you navigate the balance between this practice is a little outdated and yet you're still honoring the culture and the things that they've
Sure. Funny story, and Dorfman didn't know his way around a spreadsheet. He'll tell you this. And so I got a lot of credit that first year by simply moving things from a legal pad to a spreadsheet. They were like, "Oh, Travis, you know what you're doing around here." And so there were little things like that. Thankfully, I mean, sports are sports, whether you're writing it down on a legal pad or you're putting on a spreadsheet, kind of the meat and potatoes is the same. So I really was able to copy and paste a lot of his model. I mean, we still use a lot of the terminology, a lot of our playbook, right? Our handbook, our processes. And so, and then you improve them. A lot of times it's sport by sport. I mean, we got 32 different programs here at Aptos. So, I mean, there's 15 boys programs, 17 girls programs. So there's not a one size fits all model, right? So that was one thing that there was that realization that, hey, just because this is working for volleyball or softball, it's not going to be the case for girls soccer. And so just working with your people, and that it still changes year to year here, right? Depending on what coaches you have, depending on the kids. So just being flexible with each person and showing the support to each program.
No doubt. I think that's a great way to frame that is
Yeah.
you have 32 programs. Clearly, it's not always going to be this blanket model that works for everybody. As much as we want to have handbooks, we want to have policies. Like, the answer is 9 times out of 10, it depends. And how do you figure out like how to present that in a way that feels equitable? And that's always one of the management challenges. You coach 2 sports, and obviously, I'm sure there was some bleed between the two of your approach,
Sure.
right? I'm real big on the multi-sport approach and how I can become a better coach watching somebody that is not in my discipline, watching a sport that is not in my discipline,
Right.
taking from said sport the concept and applying it. What are some of the things that both in your practice when you were coaching, you were able to do? And then what are some of the things that you've seen by managing, walking around, that you've been able to offer as an assistant?
Sure.
Hey, you know what? Our tennis coach does this, coach, that football coach. Maybe you want to consider this at some point.
Yeah. I think when you start as a young coach, you come in and you learn, and any good coach should, learn from the veterans you're working with, copy and paste some things. For me coming in, I was a spread football guy. I didn't even know what a fullback or a tight end was in high school. I mean, we didn't know what a huddle was at my high school. It was just fast paced. And then my first football job was with the Wing T program. And so that was just like, all right, there's multiple ways to do things here. And so that was good for my tool belt, right? There's not just one way to do things. And then, with hoops, it is different than basketball. It's a different culture. Even though you got a lot of the same kids, it's a totally different program. And so knowing when to put on the football hat and when to put on the basketball hat. I forget where the other question was, but
what have you learned watching other sports that you've been able to beg, borrow, and steal and implement, even though from an objective observer, it's like, watching field hockey and adding that to basketball isn't going to work, but it does.
Right.
So what are some of the things? You got 32 programs. You're out there every day. I'm sure there's wonderful things going on that coach over here could probably learn if they could get out of their own tunnel vision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I would say, without, pointing to any, one program specifically, but in my years as coaching NADs, I found that there's a balance between, having a disciplined program and having rules, and having too many rules, right? I've seen coaches, whether I've coached with them, been on their staff, or, in my role here as an AD, you want to have a disciplined program, but you don't want to back yourself into a corner, right? Because if you make a bunch of a bunch of rules, then you got to follow them, right? And so I know that sounds weird to say, but there's really these are kids, and so not every rule you put in is going to fit every circumstance, right? So there's so many circumstantial things that happen with young teenagers and student athletes, right? These aren't NCAA athletes where they're just yours all the time. So be purposeful with what you want from your kids and what you're willing to part with. Don't back yourself into a corner, because you got to do it then at that point.
Yeah, no doubt. I think if all of us go back to our early years of coaching, our team handbook was probably very thick and robust and spelled out. And mine now is a page of about 4 bullet points. And ultimately,
exactly.
everything gets framed within those guidelines, and
Yep.
it allows a tremendous amount of freedom to handle circumstances as individual events, meet kids where they are, understand some things are age appropriate, and give you a little bit of flexibility in how you navigate those things.
Exactly.
What would you say in all of your walking around are some of the best things that go on in the programs at your school that you would offer up to other people? And from that, one of the things I've shared on the pod for a couple of years now is, as an example, as the boys basketball coach, one of the things that we've done since I was back in Sacramento is ultimately, like, our guys hug before practice, they hug after practice, before games, after games, specifically as a way to kind of mark and note, hey, we're going into battle right now, or whatever you want to call that. And then when it's over, like, we're back to the familial aspect, in addition to, teaching young men how to emote, because society doesn't really allow for that, right? So what are some of the things that you've seen coaches in your programs do that you think are super valuable that would translate anywhere?
Yeah. So I can think of hoops specifically. Like, I love when if a kid hits the floor, all the teammates got to go pick them up, right? That's a non-negotiable, right? Kid hits the floor, we all run over there. I've seen at the program I worked at in Colorado, that was the rule. Kid hit the floor, we went and picked him up. And it's funny, a couple of times you see 4 dudes charging at you, you think they're coming at you, but really they're just coming to help their teammate up. Also in hoops, every time someone checks out or checks in, the whole bench stands up and they go high five the whole bench, and then come find your seat. It's a non-negotiable, right? Doesn't matter if you're upset or what, you're going to go dap up everyone on the bench. Bigger picture, program-wide stuff, like it's some great things are happening. Like this week, like last night, girls soccer, they had a team dinner, just a team bonding session, and coach had them in the cafeteria, big screen down, did a little presentation on student athlete mental health, and they broke bread together, and it was powerful. Not because there's any big game coming up, just to get together and eat and see each other outside of that competitive nature. Cheerleading's doing a Friendsgiving here on Friday night, just to be together, right, outside of that competitive setting. So team dinners, team meetings. Our boys golf team goes to Top Golf at the beginning of every year. Little things like that just let the kids forget about the sport for a minute and get to be with their teammates and their coaches in a fun setting, right?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think sometimes the intangibles are what really, actually, not sometimes, always. Like, you take the wins and losses and you can shove them. At the end of the day, these kids 20 years down the road are remembering the van rides. They're remembering the things that happen in the gray space in between. And the more you can create those opportunities, be it where they are coordinated and organized, or just organic in the way in which you figure out how to be together, it goes a really long way. And I think if people can think about that as they're planning their programs, it totally benefits them. The other thing I was going to ask, based on the conversations we've been having and the ability, since you're not coaching, that you get to be out there, you get to watch a lot of practices. What do you think an effective practice looks like as a blanket template that you could offer up as well, right? Regardless of sport, like, these are the things that I've been able to observe where coaches are really good and efficient at delivering whatever it needs to be.
Yeah. So I'm the head track coach right now at Aptos, because our we call him the brain trust of the Aptos track and field. They knighted me head honcho last year, which was good for me. It gets me out. They said basically, Travis, you need to get back coaching a little bit, and track's a good sport in the spring to duel with your AD duties. And so just building off that, I use almost the same exact template for a practice plan every day that I would use for hoops. Obviously, the details and the timelines a little differently, but it's this. I post it. So every kid posted in the gym. For track, I posted a couple places because kids enter from all over. So I'm out there every day posting the practice plan. And the biggest reason is because it has a quote of the day on it. Every day, there's a quote of the day on top of the practice plan. And after warm up and after a little warm up lap, I bring it together and I ask someone what the quote of the day is. And, as long as they can come close, we don't have to take another lap around the gym or the stadium. But that is a great chance for you to teach some of these life lessons that we talk about every day, right? Sometimes that quote of the day is like next week for hoops, it would be Happy Thanksgiving would be a quote of the day, right? And the purpose there is, hey, spend some time with your family. We're in the gym so much, take a few days and just be with your people, right? Turn off hoops for a minute. And then you can get really in depth with it too. You can get purposeful. You can fit it if you got a big game coming up that Friday. You can tie your quotes of the day in, and it gives kind of that consistency. The kids know that every day we're starting with the quote of the day, right? But just having a practice plan was some of the best advice I ever got. Like even if you got to pull over 5 minutes before you get to practice and write something down on a card, that's going to keep you as a coach on point for that day. Right. Because what you don't want to be is in that spot at practice where everyone's asking what's next and you're stuck thinking. Right. But the quote of the day on the practice plan is the biggest thing that I could say is there's a lot of power behind that. A lot of power you can go with that.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. Like I always have one. I don't always read it to the kids. It's there. And, I stopped
Right.
posting them years ago just because I didn't think anyone paid attention to them. But I would also say this because you brought it up. And we're going to put on our administrative hat and our liability hat right now.
Yeah.
If you don't have a practice plan and somebody gets hurt, you have exposure in regards to in basketball, for example, right? A kid taking a charge gets hurt. It's like, hey, show me where in your practice plan you taught him how to take charges, right? And I'm obviously this generation, excuse me, that's not fair. This time in the world, right? Things are a lot more litigious, but hell, if nothing else, you want to make sure that you have things planned out so that you can point to it in the event it ever comes up. Like, yeah, look, we taught it right here.
Water breaks, right? Put water breaks in you always take water breaks, right? Your coaches are always, you should be taking water breaks, right? But put that on your practice plan, right? One, it forces you to remember it, but also, hey, no, we gave the kids hydration. So yeah.
Especially if you are in an area where there is heat, if you are in an area where there is concern for that, right? All those things matter. Ironically enough, I'm coaching the girls team this year, and I told them on day one, it's like, we're not taking water breaks. I said, you need water, your water's right there. Get it as much as you want, step out of the drills. And then I actually give them, but it was just kind of the approach. And then I always
you establish the process. You establish the process of your bottles over there, and you can go hydrate anytime.
Yep. Well, and it's also funny because the girls will ask at times, like today was a perfect example. We were an hour in, we had to go this morning because I had a meeting, and it was like, Coach, can we get water? And I'm just like, I always joke whenever somebody asks me that, it's like Denzel, water's for cowards. But go ahead, seriously, water break, let's go. It's like my running joke, which makes them laugh, but it's also a good reminder where it's like, how do you empower your athletes to have dialogue and feedback with you, especially in this generation where the dictatorial approach that worked for years is gone by the wayside? And I think to your point, how do you establish processes of, look, these are the expectations, but here's the wiggle room where we need to be collaborative in this journey and experience. Talk a little bit about that and how things have shifted and the way in which you see that playing out.
Yeah. And, to me, that just seemed like so second nature, right? When we talk about that, sometimes I look back and I'm like, yeah, maybe I am doing things a little different than they did 20, 30 years ago. But to me, it just kind of came natural, right? I mean, these are kids, these are people, right? So you want to establish relationships with them. If your only relationships that hour and a half of practice, 2 hours, you're probably not getting the most out of them, right? Um, and so I think you listen. Obviously, you don't want to shoot down everything, but there's some wild ideas 16-year-olds can have, and they're not always going to work. But I talked about it earlier, being vulnerable a little bit. You're not always going to know everything. Um, Certain things you want to bring your kids in on, and certain things like they don't need to see. But um, kids get it. Kids are smart. You know what I mean? Kids, especially at the high school level, kids know what's going on, and so being honest with them is the biggest thing. Like kids will respect honesty, even if it's not the exact answer they want. Um, and my philosophy is coach them hard and love them harder, right? Like every kid should know how we feel about them. And if we're jumping on them on practice, it's not because we don't love them, right? It's because the kids crave that. Kids are craving that. And just the balance, right? You want to praise publicly, right? You want to pull them in privately if there's a hard conversation. I think getting away from screaming at the top of your lungs at one kid in the gym, that's a good strategy for coaches out there.
To get away from it.
Get away from it, right? But there's times I like to say is that there's times like when I jump on the team once or twice a year, that they know it, right? I'm not constantly yelling, not constantly dropping cuss words. But the one time the 1 or 2 times a year when I need to prove that point, they know it, right? Because you're not constantly raising your voice.
For sure. All right, let me ask you this. What is something you've most recently changed your mind on? Meaning, I used to be dug in over here and now I'm over here, and here's why. And it wasn't reactionary, it was very responsive. It was, you used to have a purpose and a reason behind your belief over here, but now you've purposefully shifted to this other side. And it doesn't have to be coaching related, it can be
Right.
anything in your life. But any examples of that? I always think it's an interesting listen to hear what people have shifted on.
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest shift came from when you switch from a coach to your admin role, right? You're exposed to a lot more things. You see a lot of the inner workings of how things develop. And for me, the biggest fundamental shift was how can I say this so it comes off the right way? Um, the importance of officials, okay? And the fact that on a Tuesday night basketball game, you might get a bad call, right? And that's going to happen, but that is sports, right? That's sports. And when you're a coach, when I was a coach, it was you were checking what official is going to be at your games, right? Or you have some preconceived notions about officials. But when the admin role, you realize that okay, officials aren't plentiful in this world, and at the end of the day, we are lucky to have these people show up at our games, right? And so, kind of that general understanding of officials are humans too. I know that's not like I knew that right before. It's not like that was a fundamental shift, but just kind of the bigger respect for the job that they're doing, right? And you don't take them for granted. I guess as a coach, you take officials for granted as that's just part of the game. And so being on the admin side of things kind of shifted. It's funny that actually shifted like my 4th or 5th year coaching hoops. One summer, the girls coach was like, "Hey Fox, I'm hosting a tournament. I need some officials, right? I need some officials. Can you show up and work this middle school girls basketball tournament? I'll pay you $20 a game." So I showed up. I said, "Yeah, you got me all Saturday, man." So by the end of that Saturday night, I think I was crying on my steering wheel in the car, man. Having 7th grade coaches just rip you apart. My first call, it was a foul and a shot under the hoop, and I halfway blew my whistle. First call of the morning, halfway blew it because half the girls stopped, the other half kept going, and I kind of panicked and just said, "Keep going, keep going." And by the end of the weekend, I'm like, tweet. But having that, like, I think as a basketball coach, go work a tournament and put yourself in that shoes for a minute if you haven't refed, because it's especially in a subjective sport like basketball. But yeah, that's the biggest mindset shift is I don't know importance of officials, I guess.
Yeah, I love that position. And it's funny, one of my really good teaching buddies who's also a football coach. He and I were talking the other day, and he made some comment that was basically, you know, I just want it to be fair or whatever. And I say, I don't ever want you to say the word fair to me again. I was like, fair is the mindset of the mediocre, number one. And I said, number two, okay, every single official is out there doing the best that they can. And we're lucky to have them. And nobody's out there trying to stick it to you. And so, like, let's reset our mind, because our belief impacts the kids. And so it's like, ultimately, at the end of the day, how do we train you as an adult, and how do we train you as a kid that they're just there like the other players? At the end of the day, if they blew the whistle, great. If they didn't, too bad. Deal with it, right? And it's like, I had to wade into a couple conversations this year in water polo where it's just like, that's a foul. Stop. You're a parent. Sit down, right? Like, you just sit there and clap. But it's dangerous. It's like, great. Like, that's the coach's job to have a conversation with them later. Well, what are we supposed to do? You can go and take some training and go put on a whistle, and you can learn how to be an official. If not, just show up and support your children, right? Like, I think what I talked about the other day, we had a little to do at our water polo game, and afterwards it was like, hey, what happened? And my answer was role confusion. They're like, huh? I was like, yeah. It's like, what are your choices? Play, coach, ref, parent. That's it. And when any one of those people step into a different role, you have problems. And ultimately, the situation we encountered was a parent trying to police or hold accountable a student from another school who was violating a rule in regards to like artificial noisemakers. And it's like, yo, that's my job. That's not your job. Like, as soon as you have role confusion, right, often is where you have blowups and you have situations that you can't put back in the bottle, so to speak. Give me some thoughts on that, and how you try to coach both your athletes and your coaches and your parents around that now with your, not call it newfound, but your appreciation for the fact that we even get to the games.
Yeah. So, I mean, one, you don't want your coach to lose that competitive edge either, right? That's part of the gamesmanship of sports. And so it's a balance, right? Because you don't want to just, I mean, you know, as a coach, you're not going to give in to every call, but there's got to be a big respect for the spirit of the sport, right? As far as parents, I was thinking more about coaches and kids, right? But parents is a good point. And so what we do is we start every season with like an all sports meeting, right? So I get every athlete in the gym, and I just highlight straight up, hey, here's what we got. Here's how you are allowed to behave. Here's the punishments, and here's what we will put up with, right? And it's a small list of things we'll put up with. Student section's a big one for us, right? Because we tend to pack the stands a little bit for basketball and football, and so every year we kind of identify who our student leaders are, and I say that in a good way, right? Because you want to have those kids to come hype up the student section, and we give them a short list of all the things they can, or a large list of all the things they can do, multiple pages. Here's like the short list of the 5 things you cannot do at games. And it's fun conversations. It really is. You know, they're usually done with a smile. Some of those kids will make you laugh. Well, what if we said it like this? You're like, nope, you cannot say it like that. And so just getting ahead of it, because then when I'm walking around at a game and I go up to them, they know, right? Not that they always follow it right off the bat, but at least everyone knows what the expectations are. And then just being present, right? Because if you're not in the gym or no one's in the gym watching, role confusion may happen.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you brought it up. Like, you don't want coaches to lose that competitive edge. And I would say I'm as competitive as anybody.
Right.
And I have figured out that I get way more calls as a coach than 90% of my colleagues in this area, who look at me and go, why do you keep getting these calls? It's like, because I don't talk to them, because I welcome them. I know them by name. When the time is appropriate, I will ask, what did you see there?
Pick your battles, right?
Thank you. Right. And I think those are the best coaching advice I ever got, was to shift from that's a foul to what did you see there? And ultimately, put that in your pocket and use it, and you'll be amazed at the
Yeah.
interactions and how they shift.
I was coaching a JV basketball game maybe year 2 or 3 for me. And, one of those calls in basketball, the gym's route about. I'm kinda, huffing and puffing. The rest of it's just a minute, coach. He calls a foul and he comes up to me. He puts his arm around me. He goes, "What'd you see there, coach?" And I said, I kind of panicked. I froze. I said, "Well, I saw this." He goes, "See, I saw it this way." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And he walked away. And I said, "Man, that's how it's done right there." And that was kind of on the spot, like a epiphany moment for me. And yeah, it's the same thing. It's a gamesmanship, but like, yeah, you got to pick your battles. And yeah, yep,
It just it blows my mind in a positive way, and I love how passionate like our coaches are and everybody's coaches. And it's just like, you got so much time in the day and so many things you can worry about. Do you really want to put energy in trying to ref the game as well as coach the game, or do you want to adjust? And I think that your perspective that you just shared, similar deal. Like our water polo game the other day, a play happened on the opposite side of our bench, right in front of the goal. The referee is directly in line with the play, right? So our bench is whatever 30 yards away from it. And it's like, that's a foul. That's textbook this and that. And it's like, yo, man, you really think you have a better angle than the guy that's standing right there?
yep,
And it's just like the perspective and the willingness to understand that you saw X, but they may have seen Y. And
yep,
it doesn't have to be a debate. Just keep playing, right? It's
yep.
like the most valuable thing that I've tried to figure out over the last few years that just makes the experience better for everyone. But
Absolutely.
anyway, let's go here. What are do you have? We talk about growth in regards to feedback loops. We talk about process and getting better every day, and then we also talk about winning and learning. Do you have some failures that you've encountered over the years that have been transformational in your growth and that you still lean on as, hey, this is really important in how I became who I am now and how I got here? Are there any that you kind of lean back on that you could share with us?
Yeah. That as a young assistant at a varsity game, hoops, I, there was a call in the last minute, a block charge call, right? Probably one of the hardest calls, but this one I didn't feel was a very hard call, and it went opposite of what I felt. And it was one of those moments at the end of the game where the game's over, long run, and so I popped off on the official, and within like I popped off that they both ran over and gave me a tech at the same time, like pop, pop. It counted as a double tech, right? Even though it's for the same sentence. And so the next day I walked right into the AD's office, just self-reported, walked right in, tail tucked. And he goes, "Hey Travis, I was expecting to see you today." And I started telling him, he goes, "No, don't worry. The guy came over for dinner Saturday, told me all about it." I was like, "Oh, great, of course." What he told me, he goes, "Hey, honestly, you only should have had one, but you got two. So that means you got to take this anger management course." And you're embarrassed at that point, right? You're like, "I got to take an anger management course? Like, how embarrassing." And taking that 2 hour or the hour and a half NFHS anger management course was kind of a big, it was good for me, right? Because I was able to see, okay, one, I'm not this guy that NFHS is pursuing, but I can see how I could be perceived that way based off one call, one game, right? Now I'm that coach who got ejected, at the end of a game for whatever. So taking that anger management class, I know that sounds weird, but it was good for me, and it came at the right time as a young 23-year-old, 24-year-old. And so yeah, that was one of those failures that I definitely learned forward from.
No, that's great. I love that story. Let's wrap up there, man. I know you got to get ready to go here in the afternoon. So do I. I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and looking forward to seeing you here in a little while.
Absolutely, Justin. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for everything you're doing. Yeah, it's cool to hang out, man. Thanks for calling me on.